Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Future Film Podcast. It's your host Robert Fitzhugh from the Dublin Smartphone Film Festival. In today's episode we are talking to Declan Dowling, and he is the director of the 360 film Flaodh. That film was the winner of the 360 category last year. It's an Irish film and it's absolutely excellent, and you should be able to find it on YouTube, and it's worth checking out. Basically we sit down with Declan and we chat about VR 360, how to make one, the trials and tribulations behind it, and pretty much the process that goes into it. I found the conversation absolutely fascinating. 360 video is only something that we're dabbling at here at the festival, so it was really interesting to get a filmmaker's perspective on how they go about making it. How you doing, Declan?
Good, very good.
Thanks for coming on the pod.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good. How are things with you?
Really good, yeah.
Great. So we're here today to talk about your 360 experiences.
Yeah.
Declan, for anyone who's listening, was the winner of our 360 category at last year's Dublin Smartphone Film Festival. So I'm really interested to find out a little bit about kind of the process behind that, how you end up shooting a 360 film, and what you rate 360 films as a whole on.
Yeah, okay. So I suppose I'll introduce the film itself. It's called Flaodh, and we shot it over about 3 days in Ferrycarrig in Wicklow. Which is close to you, I think.
Yeah.
And it was actually in the Irish National Heritage Park, which is this great outdoor museum where you can look any direction and it's historical. There's lots of forests, lots of reconstruction, and there's very few modern elements, so that kind of drew me to it. But what led me to actually produce the content was that I was working in an educational software publisher, and we started working with Google on these things called expeditions, which are VR simulations for students in schools. And they would get a group of headsets for the classroom, and they would all go off on an expedition together, and they would go to Great Barrier Reef, go up to space, these kind of things. And we were creating the educational content for that, but also we shot some of them for Google. So Google sent over a jump system, which is basically the jump camera, they called it, which was 16 GoPros arranged in a circle. And what happens is each GoPro they were synchronized to take a still at the exact same time.
Oh yeah.
And they would all take the still, and the overlap would be used by an algorithm to create what was the stereoscopic depth. So it would work out what the depth was based on the difference between the two cameras, just like your left and right eyes. So that's how people perceive depth, is because we've got two eyes. People one eye won't. So
sorry guys.
So it allowed them to create these really immersive 3D panoramic images. There was an issue where you couldn't see above or below, just the way they created it and the way the algorithm worked. But that was fine, because the viewing angle of a GoPro on its side at the widest lens is actually really, really wide. So you get quite high up, and the zenith and nether, as they call them, those two areas, those blind spots, were pretty easy to cover up, and they just blurred them out. So that camera allowed us to take those kind of panoramic images. But Google also started developing it for video, and they worked with GoPro, and they created something called the GoPro Odyssey. So after working with Google for a while, taking these panoramic images, I decided to enter a competition called Jumpstart, where Google were offering the GoPro Odyssey to different filmmakers to create,
just to use that, right? Yeah.
So we entered. I was originally thinking of creating a VR film about. It's a strange one, but it was actually going to be a narrative structure where you would be a ethereal guardian spirit of a child who's going through a tough time during the recession, and you would be protecting them. So it was. I was trying to get a setting, and I knew I could film here in Ireland, and I needed a topic, and I knew there was a lot of issues in that area, and create a lot of drama for a lot of people. So I wanted to focus on that, but then. I've been working with VFX for a long time, and I've been working with historical companies like Tile Films. And they're an amazing documentary company, very advanced, very technological, and they do great historical content. So the pairing kind of made sense at the time to go with them, and I couldn't approach them with that kind of dramatic kind of story. So I needed something more, along the lines of what they could produce. So after filming in the Heritage Park in Ferrycarrig for Google, after shooting those stills, I went back and I thought, hold on a minute, I've got this great documentary historical recreation company. I've got the location with all the panoramic images that I already know the layout of the place. And then I've got that kind of loose idea of a story. So I thought, okay, well, let's just try and stick them all together. So I started merging the ideas, and I did a bit of research, and I found a mention of these what were called the werewolves of Orrery, I think. It was in the Topographica Hibernica, which is an old book written by a priest who visited Ireland.
That's some extensive research you did,
Yeah. So I wanted to find a really good source of inspiration for this. So in one of the stories in that book, it talks about a priest who got lost in the woods, and he encounters a werewolf. And instead of killing him, the werewolf leads him, because back then werewolves were nice and they could talk and all these things. The werewolf leads him to the site of its dying wife and asks him to perform last rites. This is obviously his own words. And then in return, the wolf leads the priest back out of the woods, as a favour. So that story changed throughout the years, and it became this kind of fairy tale myth of these guardian spirits of the woods that protect children, and they're wolf-like, werewolf kind of ethereal creatures.
I was going to say, it kind of, on some level, follows a similar theme to the idea you had for the recession thing, where it was a child.
Yeah, exactly. So there was that connection there, and I thought, okay, I'll take that structure and I'll apply it to this park, and I'll get these people in and get these Vikings and these the extras. Mm-hmm. So Tile went out and they went to local drama groups, and they got some students in, and we started working. We started doing casting. I drafted the script based in part on the layout of the park. So what we
this was still for the competition, yeah.
This was still for the competition. Yeah. So there was a script and then a pitch document put together, and I had a researcher from Tile help me with a lot of it as well. Mm-hmm. And we spent quite a while, about a month, putting this document together, and we pitched it, and Google loved it, so they sent us the camera. But then we had another issue: we didn't have any budget.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it's a pretty expensive looking thing.
Yeah. So we had the camera, which was a great start, but we didn't have the budget. So what I decided to do was put the camera to work and use the camera to film for different companies to pay for the budget of this film.
Cool.
So, because I had a full-time job at the time, I didn't want to go around doing. I didn't want to re-register as a freelancer, all this stuff. I didn't want to do all that.
Yeah. How long did they give you the camera for? What was the duration that they?
Originally, this is the thing. Originally, it was supposed to be a month.
Yeah.
And that was a month to learn to use it, to get it to work, to do all the, because they're quite problematic, these cameras, But then we ended up filming another production for them, which is unreleased. It's a medieval one. It's actually better than Flaodh, I think, because I slowed the camera down. It's on tripods and rails.
Did you do it after Flaodh?
Yeah.
So you kind of learnt.
But it allowed me to keep the camera for another 2 months and get a pickup for the ending of Flaodh. So if you watch Flaodh really carefully, you'll see the kid at the start has long hair, and then the really short hair at the end. Because it was 2 months later we shot the ending.
You didn't bother put him in a wig or anything like that?
No, didn't have to.
The end of Fantastic Four.
Yeah. So doing that allowed us to keep it for. So we ended up having the camera for 3 months. So I went out and I approached various, companies like Flaodh and Dublin City Council and all these different ones, and basically just offered my services shooting panoramic content. Yeah. And the payment for that funded the production of this film. HMH also co-produced. They shot expeditions while we were filming the content. So that kind of helped build up. Basically, they paid for the Vikings. I brought everything else. So that got me a gang of Vikings, which was great.
Nice.
So we shot Viking expeditions when we were down there too. So a big reason for doing it that way was because there was no funding. There was no way to find funding, and there still isn't. I think there's one film that some Oscar-nominated director that got funding recently
for 360.
But it's not even a film. It's like a VR simulation or something.
I suppose because again, it comes back to that issue: is that who's going to watch it, where you're going to show it, how
So things like that you could probably release on Steam. You could, PlayStation Store. YouTube is fine, it does drop resolution depending on what device you're watching on, what your bandwidth is. If you use the offline mode on YouTube, actually YouTube Red, the premium version, you can watch stuff offline at the highest res, which is
class.
great. Yeah. But still, you're always watching something that was shot because these cameras, they shoot, it's 16 GoPros. So you imagine 16 full HD pieces of footage put together,
stitched together.
It adds up to 8192 by 8192 image size, pixel
so it's
size.
Always being.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And that was a big challenge for post production because those files are so big.
Because you have to stitch them all together. Yeah. I mean, actually, it stitches it for you. Yeah.
It stitches. That's the thing. So Google's algorithm, you did have to collect the files, and they had software for that too. Send it up to the cloud. The cloud stitches it and sends you back renders. The problem is those renders were so big that no editing software out there could really work with them. So I ended up approaching Trinity College and working with VSense, who are a research group.
Oh, I know VSense. Yeah.
In Stack B, and they allowed us to use some of their facilities to create to basically edit the whole thing. It was the only place I could find machines powerful enough to do it. So a lot of it was built in there. I did a lot of it in my spare time. I was actually, because of work, I was traveling around the world quite a bit. So I had a laptop, and I'd be getting up at like 6 a.m. or like 4 a.m. in a hotel in Florida, and like starting to edit it on a laptop, and then getting back to Ireland and offloading that into Trinity. And it was just constant amount of work just to get it done because of the file size and because of the way VR works.
How long did it take you to shoot the actual film?
The film only took 2 days.
Okay,
3 days in total because of the extra pickup day, but 2 days to film.
And then how long was it to edit?
It took, now, to be fair, the edit was done in about a month or 2, but the visual effects took
That's what I was going to say.
The rest of the year.
How does that work in terms of visual effects?
So,
because you're looking away, you can look away from me, you can look back.
Exactly, yeah. So the software is still catching up, but at the time, After Effects was getting there. It was starting to, it was one of the more cutting edge. There was Nuke does a lot of work for it as well, for VR stuff, and there's a lot of other individual programs. But I chose After Effects because I know it so well. And what it does is it tracks some of the footage. Right, and it works out because you're able to match cameras these days very easily. If you've got a piece of footage, you've probably seen it on mobile devices as well, where you have a simulation. It's not even AR. It's not even 3D. It's just 2D tracking of a scene. So this tracking software is great, but it doesn't work with panoramic round images that go all around you. So it tracks a piece of it, and then it works out where the camera is and where it's facing, and the rest is kind of guessed based on that.
Okay, so
because the great thing about VR cameras is they're always the same. It's the same lens. It's always 360.
There's no change in there.
So they're able to kind of give you rough estimates. So with a lot of tracking, unfortunately the tracking failed a lot, so you have to chop pieces of footage up. And what that causes is the visual effects you have tracked into the scene, they pop in the next scene.
They almost jump up.
So I had to find points where I could cut. Not only points where I had to cut in live action that were to allow for transitions between scenes, I had to find points where I could cut the visual effects too. So I had a couple of explosions put in.
Because you have a lot of explosions. All that's computer effects.
All
the arrow effects with the fire.
That was fake as well. Yeah,
the actual arrow is fake.
Yeah, he didn't fire anything. If you look really closely, the great thing is no one can see it because the resolution is still not high enough.
Well, the great thing about it is no one can see because the resolution is quite high, and there's so much to look at in a 360 film that you can sneak in stuff like you said about the hair and the long hair. There's so much to take in that you
wouldn't even notice.
You can't scrutinize it each individual frame as much as you would in a film.
Yeah, and having a location like that has so many different things to look at as well. So many beautiful little pieces of architecture and all these different things. So the great thing was that when I put it out originally, it was on YouTube, and that allowed me to analyze heat map data of what people were looking at. Because I did have a certain...
so you can actually see, as opposed to seeing how long people drop off a video, you can actually see where they're looking at.
Where they're looking and when.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It overlays that on top of the video, and you can see little people's eyeballs drifting off and looking at things. So you can
see what people are... Oh, that's brilliant. Was there anything random that people were...
There was. What was it? There was one interesting point. I set up a scene, I staged it so that the protagonist who's in the foreground, you're looking over his shoulder at the Viking who's about to shoot him with an arrow.
Yeah.
And then a monk runs by and falls to his knees, right? Yeah. And I wanted the people to look at the monk, look at the Viking, and look at the kid, right? In that order. and I thought I had it staged perfectly. But what I found is that people actually just kept looking at the Viking. They ignored the kid. This is actually in a research paper that I drafted for VSEDS. But what we found was that because it was an over-shoulder shot, people just assumed they were the kid. It was his perspective.
Yeah, from narrative.
So they didn't bother looking at him. So the drama, the tension, and the kid backing up, about to be shot with an arrow, they didn't see any of that. They were just looking at the Viking and the monk dying on the ground.
It's funny because that's traditionally when you're watching a movie you would be you become the protagonist with shots like that.
So I didn't realise that at the time. I really thought you're looking at the kid because he's beside you, but no, you embody him even though he's just right beside you, and you look where he's looking.
Now, in terms of staging that, did you have to that level? I know there's an instance where it didn't click, but did you have to stage it in a way where, okay, well, I know I want the monk to come through? What was the decision to have the monk walk through, fall down? Was it just to add more stuff for you to look at?
No, it was a pacing thing, really.
Yeah.
I wanted that to be a pinnacle scene, and I wanted to give the viewer a choice as well to intervene in this scene. So the way we shot it was there's actually multiple versions of every scene, and there's some people in the film, in the full version of the film, that aren't in the version you saw. Okay. Because what you saw, what we screened at your festival last year, was just one path through the film's narrative.
Yeah, it was one.
Yeah, and at certain points, if you pick something else, or if you go make a mistake and don't pick something, things happen. So this scenario was the boy, and there's a basket on the wall between him and the Viking who's about to shoot him with an arrow. If you focus on the basket, you can knock it over, and that's what happens in the film.
Oh, class.
And it gets knocked over, and the oil spills out, and there's a big explosion, and he escapes. But if you don't, it times out, and the kid gets shot, and then the kid limps away, and he's got an arrow in him for the rest of the film.
So that's so interesting. So when you're composing the story for that, you have to come up with multiple story strands and junction points where it can change?
Yeah. So I created kind of you'll see it on the website if you go to Flaodh.net, FAOLADH.net. You'll see there's the presentation document we made for Google that has all the storyboards and the layout of the actual narrative structure.
So it was devised as a choose your own adventure almost type thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Because a lot of the ones I've seen don't give you those options. They don't play out like that. It's just it's almost as if you strap into a roller coaster and you go through and you look at whatever. And
like The Limit, I think it was called. Rodriguez did it, and it looks amazing, really high quality Hollywood thing, and you're like, but it's kind of like Hardcore Henry. You're like falling out of airplanes. And I think Norman Reedus is in it and stuff. It's really cool. But it is linear. They're linear, and I think part of that is because that's like a roller coaster, and this film is kind of drifty. It is roller coastery.
I mean, it's got that propulsion.
You're moving, because you are the werewolf. You are moving through the land and running. But and the poor cameraman, he was so tired at the end of that.
Yeah, because he used to duck down. Because you see him, you catch him sometimes.
You see a shadow or something. The thing is, we had to suspend. We actually had to put the Odyssey rig upside down because the weight of it was so heavy that the whole film was shot upside down. I had to turn it back over because it's just such an awkward shape. It's not. There's no rigs built for that kind of thing. It's like a huge, dumbbell or something, that you have to carry around. So it was a challenge, but it was an interesting challenge, and there was a lot of really cool stuff. I definitely learned a lot about filming.
But the choose your own adventure thing, was that something that you'd seen somewhere else, or was it just kind of
it was kind of not a requirement, but it was something Google suggested at the start
to give the audience options.
They wanted to see that out there because they had a platform called it was on Daydream, but it was called what was it again? They closed it down recently, but they had a couple of choose your own adventure kind of things they were building, and there was actually a crowd who shot and completed their choose your own adventure thing called Light Sail VR, and they created this really cool camping horror kind of thing, and you would they did it in a different way. So in my film, you get to a scene, you go along the tracks, you run like the wolf, and then you get to a scene and you make a choice, and that affects what happens in the next scene. Their version, what they did was they shot every scene in a square area of a forest, and they're all within about 5 meters of each other. So some of the scenes are nothing, but they shot them all, and they have a grid. and then your choice is to move to different points.
It's almost like checkers or chess.
Exactly,
You're moving from one side lane side
to another piece.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so they finished that and they released that, and originally I was trying to get them to actually develop the narrative structure of my film to build the app itself.
Yeah.
We were going to put it out on Gear VR, Google Daydream, and ideally PlayStation VR as well. But again, funding was a problem, so we never really got past that next stage.
Mm-hmm.
But after your festival, actually, I ended up going to another thing in Germany called the Future Design Symposium. It was in Hellbrom, in a science gallery called Experimentia, and they have a huge cinema dome. The cool thing about the cinema dome is it's completely like full dome cinema.
Class.
Yep. So the projection of the 360 film is all around you, but they also have 3D glasses. So you're in a 3D dome, a full 360 dome, wearing 3D glasses, and it was actually the most comfortable way to watch the film.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was still 4K because I only finished in 4K. I never actually finished the film in 8K. Because the software just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
So someday I will try and actually do it. And at the moment, because of that event, a couple of studios approached me. So there was a studio called Delta Soundworks who do panoramic audio, spatial audio, kind of for dome cinemas for the most part. But they also do VR content. And they're really eager to work on it. So we've been discussing back and forth on ways to get this funded. We're looking at a group called Kaleidoscope who fund a lot of VR ventures like this. And we're both on there, and we joined. And I've actually contacted another Irish studio, Pink Kong Studios. I spoke to them about a year ago about doing an animated opening sequence to give the story context, because the context I can imagine
like
earlier,
a Book of Kells type
it's
thing.
lost. It was supposed to be there, but I never got around to it. So all of that needed funding, and we've been just poking around at the moment, just trying to find different funding sources for these kind of things.
I mean, I probably this is an obvious thing, but the fact that you chose to use Gaeilge, I mean, does that open you up to potential funding from?
It might. It wasn't intended, but it was really just because that was the language.
Yeah.
And if you see the other scenes, the kids, that Viking actually speaks, and there's another little girl Viking in it, and they actually speak Nordic. And there's and the monk is speaking Latin as well. Just felt like it was right, to do it that way. So maybe we could actually approach something else Gaeilge.
Pitch it as an Irish thing,
but the cool thing is we actually got some interest from a lady named Paula Fairfield. She does the creature sound effects for Game of Thrones.
Oh, cool.
So she's on board with working on it now, and she's going to do the wolf sounds and the different creatures.
Yeah, because when you were editing it, are you doing the sound design yourself? Are you taking into account arrow flies over back of?
Yeah. So I did record it in spatial audio.
Yeah.
And I edited some of it in spatial audio, but then I just basically I hit limitations. I'm just not that good at audio.
Yeah, me neither.
So I just outputted it as normal stereo. But there is the original core sound effects are still the actual in-camera audio is spatial audio.
Because I remember the arrow, you can hear an arrow come from one place to another. Yeah,
goes
you
over,
can hear that. Yeah.
So I did stereo, but so it does go left ear, right ear, but it doesn't go spatially around you. If you have ambisonic audio, it's way better.
Yeah. But I mean, so the medieval one that you did that never went anywhere. Did you ironed out a lot of this stuff after that, was it?
We did, yeah. There was some issues with Flaodh with nausea and stuff like that. Now people are sitting, and if they have a good headset, it's fine. But if they're standing, or if they have latency in the headset, if it's a bit delayed or something like that, if the reactions when you turn your head aren't very good, you can feel a bit nauseous because it's like a roller coaster. And
I suppose you wouldn't have known that. You don't know that until you screen it, do you? Or can you combat that?
We were a bit ballsy. We did know it, and we just didn't want to change the narrative for that. We thought some people don't like roller coasters, but for this other one, it was actually for the educational software company I worked for. So we needed it to be a bit more tame. So we shot everything much slower, and we had it on rails, and we got some beautiful locations. We went down to Killiney National Parks, and we shot Muckross Abbey. We shot in Swords Castle.
Putting it on a rail, did you still do the choose your own adventure style, or was it more linear?
This one was different again. So they're all experiments, really. That's the other thing about this industry. The VR content, it's all experimental right now. So everything's different, everything's higgledy-piggledy. Nothing's really solid or perfect, you know. But what we did with that one was we tried to create a mystery. So it's for kids again, this one. So it was basically the kids could, they would see clues throughout the video. It was a story about a plot to assassinate the king. So it starts with the monk, and the monk is you're following the monk for the whole film, and you embody him sometimes, and you get the clues. You get to look around the scene and try to pick up the clues. And at the end of the film, you get to choose who you think the villain is.
Oh, class!
Yeah. So and
does each one have a wrong, right answer?
Yeah. Well, no. In the software, we would have built that. Yeah.
Because
no, we didn't shoot different answers. We ran out of time. No, so there's either wrong and a text pops up and says try again, or correct, and the guy gets chucked out.
Oh, because it'd be great. Because I remember, do you remember that Blade Runner game in the PC years ago? There was a Blade Runner game back in the 90s.
No, I don't think I played that one. No.
It was one of the first games that had 19 different endings. It was you were like looking for Deckard.
Yeah.
But it was a brilliant game. But it had 19 different endings, and whichever decisions you made looking for clues would dictate the end of the game.
That's that's branching narrative stuff.
Yeah, it was. No, it's really it's really good, and not something you see a whole heap of. And it's a shame you don't see more about it. I'm sure you will. But I don't know, from my experiences, from like you're saying 360 is kind of experimental. My experiences is people are trying stuff out, and sometimes it works and sometimes I think horror is something people really try with 360. I've seen a lot of 360 horror movies. Some of them are great, some of them are kind of funny. I remember there was one that I watched where it was like, because it's funny because horror, you cut a horror movie a certain way to build tension, but if you have it in a 360 scenario, that tension sort of dissipates. So like there was an example, there was someone in a house and they were in their kitchen, and you see someone in the background and they walk through a door, and you know, if it was a horror movie, you'd be like, well, where are they going to come out of or whatever? But you were just like, I just watch that door and wait for him to come back out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like the physics of it would mean he has to come back that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were saying when we watched it, we were like, wouldn't it be great if you cast a bunch of people, they all were dressed as killers and they came out of different doors, and that would force you to look everywhere. You wouldn't know where it's coming from. But you could see that people were experimenting. It was just funny because in that particular genre, without tension, without a way to cut for thing, you're just like, the killer's coming from that door, I'll just wait until he gets here. You know?
And your spatial awareness it's kind of like being on set. Like I noticed that when they first, like, I think they brought out a Terminator VR or something like that, and I was kind of like, whoa, VR, cool. And then I watched it and I was like, this is awful. And I think a big part of it is that the cameras just don't have any depth. You know, and some you can force depth of field in, but then it doesn't agree with people's eyes because they want their own depth. So it's basically like watching a CCTV kind of feed, you know, of a film, or being on a set of a film and watching that. Yeah,
which isn't exactly the most.
No, it's not. It's not the most cinematic thing. I mean, cinema has depth of field. You know, it has framing. It has different lenses for different effects and angles. So you can't change the camera angles really. You know, you can kind of move the camera around, but it's like taking someone's head off and wiggling it around. You know, so it is very hard to create cinematic stuff.
Unless, as I was saying, you play around with people's ideas of what their expectation is. As I was saying, like that horror movie, if you had multiple people dressed as a killer coming from different parts of the house, and you know, physically it made no sense. At least then that would be like, well, I don't actually know where this person, the character, is coming from.
Murder mystery.
Exactly. You're like, like, where is it coming from? But at least it forced you to look. But I remember this specific experience was like, well, logic would pretend he's gone out that door, and for him to get back in, because I also understand the geography of the house, because I'm looking around, so he has to come back to that door. So I'll just sit here and watch that one spot. So it almost negates the purpose of having to turn your head or look around, because you're just like, well, he's coming from there, I'll just sit and have my tea and wait. But I have seen, like, yours is probably the best example I've seen of something that is kind of, that almost transports you to somewhere else. And you forget for a moment that that's where you are. And I suppose the attention to detail that's gone into the casting and the everything and the setting, as you're saying, the heritage site, 360 everywhere you look. You're in that period, as opposed to other things where you're in a house and you can look around, but you're very much stationary in a house. Yours is moving, it's propulsive, and it's surrounded by heritage, and everywhere you look is... It's
some kind of element of fantasy or historic content.
So set design goes a long way no matter what you do.
No, we did have an amazing art director as well. Lynn Williams, she's based up in Cavan, and she did an amazing job. Like, you know, she'd find every single sign and drape furs over them and these kind of things.
Because then again, you'd have to go back and look for historically accurate Were you looking for like historically accurate costumes and all that sort of stuff?
No, well, actually, the great thing was because it was tile, they kind of, this is like second nature to them. So, like for Lynn, it was like, no, he's wearing this kind of cloak because that's what they wore, and I was like, okay, you're the boss. You know? Yeah. So I had a lot of influence from other people, so it was great. So there was a huge emphasis on historical accuracy, which kind of helped because we were creating something that was kind of innocent in a way. Like, it wasn't that dark a film. There's a couple. I play a dead monk in the background in one of the shots, but like, there's nothing too graphic and nothing too scary. And I wanted it to be that way so that anyone could enjoy it. You know? But if I wanted, something that my mother could watch as well as a kid. You know. And I think we got that, and that was kind of always the goal, because it had a pairing with the educational software company, had Google, there was all these different companies involved in different things that we had to create something that was innocent like that, and I think we achieved that, but it's just a shame we never actually achieved the full scope of the interactivity.
Still, I mean,
like it's a very hard
baby
thing to
steps
do.
I suppose.
So we have Paula Fairfield, the Game of Thrones lady, interested at the moment. We're looking to get another producer involved, actually, from Kaleidoscope. We're going to approach that community and try and pull someone in, and we'll see what we get, And
that's kind of what you're working on next, is just kind of, where your actual day job is just kind of...
Yeah, just chipping away. The main reason I'm actually trying to get another producer is my day job is just getting more and more busy. So
I'd imagine,
I need to step away from it and let someone else take the reins.
Yeah, you need someone to be working in the background almost while you're, because you've done the creative element of it now, and you need a good producer to come in.
So it can either live as that narrative film that you saw, or it could be taken to the next level and given the interactive elements.
It'd be nice to have the interactive element of it.
I think it would be cool for like PlayStation or something like that.
Yeah, it would be very cool to. And what's the total running time when you include all the?
It'll be about 20 minutes. I think.
Cool. Yeah.
It's about 6 minutes at the moment. So if you played through it, you're always going to get about 6-7 minutes. But if you play through every single one, you're going to add up to that 20 minutes in total.
Cool. And what was the rough budget on that? Because that seemed... I know you have the...
It was pretty low, actually. It was about 10, 15.
Yeah, I suppose because the setting does so much of the heavy lifting.
A lot of the work.
Seems like this thing cost a fortune. Do you know?
Yeah. We shot it in 2 days as well, so it was very, very quick.
Because it seems on par with like an episode of Vikings or something like that, in the sense that you have that...
The production value was there. I think it was... Like, I actually ended up... I had to plan everything based on the park. I actually went up, brought my kid and my niece up to the park, and we acted out the film. And I shot it with an Osmo. I'll send you a link to that later. It's really dodgy, and some of the scenes I didn't have any kid in it, so because they got bored and they didn't want to do it.
If you send me that, I can put it against
you can
the
put
actual
it in,
because that'd be funny doing it side by side.
But I ended up like storyboarding, drawing the kid onto 360 footage to kind of plan it all out, so you get a really good idea of where the production value came from, and it's just clever planning. And you can do that with like traditional film as well, and for mobile content, mobile filmmaking.
Well, planning is key.
Finding the right elements and sticking them together in the right way.
So
if people can find like the right time of day to shoot a place, that might solve a lot. It goes a long way to shoot in the golden hour and that kind of thing.
You can get your sun chaser apps now, which will tell you where the sun's going to be at a specific time.
Throw up one shade and so there's a lot of indie production things that you can do. Like we had feck all lights on that shoot. It was all natural.
Oh really? Yeah. Even the internal inside the
we had
thing.
We had a couple for the fire effects.
Yeah,
just kind of flashing. But and for some of the scenes where you're focusing on an object, we flashed the light on those. But like the actual staging in the scene, it was a lot of natural light, especially the outdoor stuff. It was just there was no extra lights involved, and it was purely because you'd see them.
True, there's nowhere to hide. Like you could barely hide the cameraman at times. So I suppose you're And
the cameras also, they adjust. So even if one camera goes out of overexposed, then the other ones will adjust based on that. So you're dealing with 16 cameras doing different exposure at different times.
I suppose if it was a modern setting, you could probably hide lights in the sets.
You just use the house lights.
But you're kind of snookered in that capacity. But planning. How long were you planning for? Did you say?
A month prep. Another month, a month pitching, I guess, and then another month after that.
And you scripted this all out as a normal narrative.
Yeah. And then just shot it over 2 days, and then did a pickup a month later. and a year.
It's very impressive. I'm always very impressed when you find out that there was a film that came out. It was shot on phones there, called Blue Moon, and it was shot in It was shot in 2 days in a petrol station at night in New Zealand. And when you look at it, it's like a feature, and it's an hour and a half long, and they shot it over 2 days, all at night. So they just did 2 night shoots, and I'm sure they prepped during the day. I don't know the extra story behind it. I'm always really impressed when you see something and you find out, what, they did that in 2 days?
Yeah.
And then you see someone's like, oh, we were working on it for a year. You're like, really? Yeah, expect more.
You do. I think it's you plan for a very long time and you spend a lot of time in post, but the actual shoots are always really short.
And the more you plan and fine tune. I mean, I've done shoots years ago where we didn't plan correctly, and it drags it out because one small mistake comes up and you're like, this is going to kill the entire day. But I suppose if you've spent months planning, and should just be going in and executing.
Yeah, and then things go wrong.
Well, there is that element to it too. But no, that's great. Anyway, cheers for that.
Okay, no
and
problem.
Thanks very much. And it was great. And hopefully there's some 360 submissions at this year's festival. So I'm interested in checking them out. But as I said, it's not something I get. The reason I have it, I think I said to you before, is I like a lot of them aren't shot on phones, but I like the fact that you have to view them on your phone. Yeah. And there's an interactive element to it that I really enjoy.
You still have the Daydream, don't you?
I don't. No, I give it back to you.
Oh, was it mine?
It was yours. You gave me 2.
I thought you had a second one.
No, you gave me 2.
Oh, feck. Oh yeah, I had to give them back to Google.
Yeah.
You should. You've got different VR viewers though, don't you?
If you get
360 submissions, we should get you one. And we'll make sure that's there at least. Yeah. Do you remember I had to create a 3D film based on? I converted my film for the screen.
Yeah.
So I think you could do that again if you really had to. You could have people. I could help you advise them on how to do it.
Convert it over.
Yeah, but if you have a headset there, it'd be awesome. It was really cool last year. Everyone was queuing up.
People that's why I like it, because people queue up to do it, and that's really and it's a great experience. And you get, as you were saying, you want something that your mom could watch and your son could watch. And there is that element to it at the event where people
everyone just sits down and has a good time.
And people generally don't do that unless they're like, if I went home to my mom and said put this headset on, they won't. But if everyone queuing up and everyone's doing it,
they get a bit excited about
join in. So I like the interactive element of it. So I just wish I'd get more submissions because I just don't get a lot. You're talking 2, 3, 4.
We'll put a lot of hashtags on this and see if we get a few more.
Yeah, hopefully. Anyway, cool. Thanks for that. Cheers, man.
Good luck.
That's it from us, guys. That's our chat with Declan. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. 360 filmmaking is not something I know that well, and I'm very interested to learn more about. So it was great to get his insight on how he put together that film. As I said, you can check out that film on YouTube. And you can also find a link to it through the Dublin Smartphone Film Festival site under the winners category. The festival itself will take place on the 25th of this month. There are still tickets available for that. It's taking place in the Tailings Distillery in Newmarket there in Dublin. So if you're looking for tickets, you can grab them. Again, you can grab them through our website if you're in there checking out the 360 submissions. Thanks very much, guys, and look forward to you guys tuning in for future episodes. Bye.